Hello, welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook. This is an independent podcast and it's all about musicians talking to me about how their music makes the world a little more harmonious. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined for the second time by guitarist Tom Ollendorff today. And I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation. Tom's album Where in the World was released back in November last year, and I reviewed that on my blog. You can read that. I interviewed him for the first time in June 2023, and the links for all of this is in the show notes. But Tom is off very soon, touring again around the world with this album. So I thought now would be a great time to chat with him. What you're listening to now is Past Lives from Where in the World. I hope you enjoy listening to this, and then I hope you enjoy listening to my conversation with Tom Ollendorff.
Well, thanks for having me on again. It's really nice.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I loved Where in the World, and I think it just hit sort of November time last year. I was so busy. I'd got so many people to talk to.
Yes,
so I was like,
yeah.
oh, I'm just gonna review the album and then that's fine. And then when I bumped into you, I was like, oh, I'd really like to do another interview. So here we
that's
are.
great. Well, thanks. Yeah, November's always such a busy time of year, isn't it?
Yes, it's crazy.
It's always, it's so busy. Well, anyway, it's really nice to speak now.
Absolutely. And you're just about to take Where in the World out on tour again. So it's perfect timing.
Exactly. It is great. It's great timing, yeah.
Yeah. So I've got a lot I want to talk to you about.
Mm-hmm.
So on the album, you've got the fabulous Aaron Parks.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
But you haven't got Aaron with you on tour, is that right?
Yeah. Well, we just played, the first date of this tour was actually on the weekend, and we just played in Venice together as a quartet. But yeah, just the way the dates lined up, his schedule and my schedule and everything, and it wasn't possible. It was just this first date with him, but we had a great time, and the rest of it, most of it's trio. There's some dates. There's a couple of quartet dates. Playing in London. Ivo Neem's going to play piano with me at Ronnie's, which would be great.
Yeah.
But most of the tour is trio, and you know we're traveling a lot. We're going to Asia and stuff, and it is definitely, for me anyway, a little easier traveling with three people rather than four, especially at the moment, flight prices and everything are kind of insane. So it's definitely kind of simpler to travel as a trio often. And but it was wonderful to do the first day of the tour with Aaron. You know, the music's so complete with him. So
yeah, and he's lovely. I mean, I've heard his music, as a solo artist, but also, on Where in the World, he's just such a great pianist, isn't he?
Oh, one of my favorite ever. Yeah. Absolutely. Incredible.
I do. I mean, I heard Ivo for the first time live just a few weeks ago. He was with Nicholas Lucassen.
Oh yes, yeah. I was just playing with Nicholas on Wednesday, so I know Nicholas well.
Yeah, he's a great player, and I love his album as well.
Yeah, he's got a great new record out. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So Ivo was astonishing there.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic, and we haven't played together much, so I'm it's always nice to connect, and hear how your music sounds with different people. So I'm really looking forward to play with him. He's fantastic.
Yeah, sure. And obviously Connor Chaplin is and he's an astonishing bass player, isn't he?
Yeah. Oh, he's incredible. Yeah, and he's a good friend. We've worked together a lot now over, I guess, a kind of 6 or 7 year period with a bit of a break for COVID, and he's just a great person to travel with, and obviously musically unbelievable. So I've been lucky. He's done, I think, all the records I've made as a band leader he's been on, and some other stuff as a sideman he's been on as well, where we've both been on it. So fantastic, great.
Yeah, and it seems like quite a humble guy as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most. He's really one of the most natural and talented, gifted musicians I've ever come across, and Yeah, he's very unassuming about it. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, he's at Ronnie's all the time, and
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
he's all over the place. He's like you; he's busy with people, so that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we've got the marvelous James Madron on drums. He's incredible, isn't he?
Yeah. He's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, similar to Connor in loads of ways. Very nice, down to earth guy, and like extraordinary drummer and
Yeah,
musician. And of course the bass does as well, but the drums, particularly on this record, I think they shape the sound of the music a lot, and so it's a really important choice who you have on drums, and I mean it's really important who you have on all the instruments, obviously, but the drums. Yeah, James. I notice when I sometimes hear the music back and how much of an impact James is playing brought to the compositions. So yeah, fantastic guy, and
yeah.
they're all nice. They're all lovely.
Yeah, so it's going to be great. I'm going to point, obviously, my podcast listeners to your website to find out where you're
Yes.
playing, so that
Yeah, absolutely.
hopefully,
Please do. Yeah.
they can come along. And there are a number of guitarists working predominantly in the UK or with other UK artists at the moment who I really, really enjoy. And you're definitely up there,
Oh, thank you.
Nigel Price,
Oh, yeah, I love
Rob
Nigel.
Luft,
Yeah. Yeah.
though you three just absolutely have got, very different styles.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love Nigel's fantastic, and we occasionally play together. Not that often, but I've done a couple of duo things with him recently. He's a great.
Yeah.
He's a real encyclopedia of jazz guitar. He's a really incredible player, and I love hanging out and playing with him. I feel like
Yeah.
fantastic. So yeah, great. Loads of great people around. Yeah.
Yeah, there are. But I particularly liked Where in the World, and I'm really glad we've got this opportunity to talk about it now
And yeah, thank
because
you.
yeah. So when did you write the tracks?
Well, I guess it was all. I think all the music was written over probably a 2 year period between 20. Or maybe actually, you know what? The first compositions were written. There's one song on the album, Three Bridges, which I'd recorded on my previous album, and so that I was written in 2021. But everything else was written from the end of 2022 until really like even the months just before the album. I was kind of constantly refining the music, and when I was on tour, I'd sometimes bring a couple of new pieces and then get us like introduce them and get a sense for it. And yes, it was all written, I would say, between the end of 2022 and kind of the start of 2025. So 2.5 year period. Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously when you're working with other people, you get inspiration, don't you? Or
Yes.
you
Absolutely.
your own tunes will morph into something that's more your thing, or whatever it is. But
That's exactly right. Yeah.
yeah, and also one of the things that I particularly like about jazz is, for a start, all of the compositions are constantly evolving
Mm, mm,
because,
mm, mm.
whatever you put on the album, even though when people come and hear you, they're they're hearing you with the trio version, the same guys that were on the album, but
Yes.
the songs won't be performed in the same
Absolutely,
way.
yeah, and actually having the piano and not having the piano does change the music a lot. It changes the role of the guitar. It changes how much how much I accompany the melodies I'm playing with chords and voicing. So yeah, and even some of the tunes have a more familiar I would say they're more consistent the way they're played in terms of the performances, but a lot of the tunes quite open, the structures and stuff, and so you're totally right, it's very evolving. And also, I've been lucky to be touring the music quite a lot in the last year, and so it's a way of keeping the music fresh is to explore different ways of playing it, whether that's who takes solos or sometimes the structure. There's lots of different things, even just the structure of the solo itself can be different. So yeah, I mean, and that's why it's so great to work with such great musicians, because they're also pushing you as well, and they're pushing in a nice way the direction of the music, and so I'm very lucky to be working with such great people. It's very helpful as a composer and I guess arranger to have people's input, even if they're not saying anything. Sometimes it's just something they play gives me an idea.
Do you find the evolution of tracks also comes from the response you get from the audience?
That's a really good question. What I would say about that as a kind of broader idea is that the first tour I did with Aaron, Connor, and James was in 2024 in the spring, and there were a couple of, like, for example, the song Three Bridges. I re-recorded that partly just because of the way it felt to play that with those guys, especially the piano, and also the reaction. I felt like it was very well received, and it kind of, the composition took on a whole new life. So I think that there's definitely an element of that. I mean, music is for the audience, and I try my best to practice a lot and improve and get better. But then when you perform without the audience, it's not a concert, and so I guess not. It's not. I wouldn't say it's directly, but the way people react to the music definitely indirectly or semi-directly influences what I'm doing. I think it's not. Of course, if you do something and you play a certain arrangement or with a certain groove or something, and it goes down really well, it's really well received. You think, okay, well, maybe that's something to think about. I generally follow how I'm imagining the music in my head, but of course, the audience reaction and also just the reaction of the people you're playing with shapes the direction you want it to go in. Yeah.
One of the things I'm doing at the moment, I'm working on loads of different projects, but one of the main ones is looking at how musicians dealt with the lockdown, because obviously I started Harmonious World in 2020. So
Of course, yeah.
all of those first conversations were all while people were on their own or with their
Yes.
family.
Yeah.
And how they talked about missing that interaction with audiences and also the interaction with other musicians on stage, because that couldn't even happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's very unhuman, I think, to for most people, the human thing is being with other people, and so yeah, that was a challenging period, I think, for everybody, not just artists. But you're right, it kind of struck a blow at the heart of what it means to be a performer.
Yeah. I always remember how, and I can't remember the timing. When as I'm going through the book, through the discussions that I'm having to write the book, I'm sort of getting more of a sense of the timeline. And there was a period, I don't know if you remember it, where venues, for a start, they started kind of thinking about opening up, and the first thing they did was to allow musicians in to perform on stage,
Yes,
and live stream it.
I remember. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because some of the people I talked to then were saying it's great and it's brilliant to be on stage, but it isn't the same
Yeah.
when the audience is behind a screen.
Yeah, definitely not. It's definitely not the same. And I mean, it can be good in its own way, and
Yeah.
but it's like recently we did, James, Connor, and we did something for Radio 3. We did like a live Radio 3 thing, and that it reminded me a bit of those days of playing on Zoom or something, because there's people listening, and people are just there, but they're not. You can't feel the energy of people, and so it changes it. And in some ways, it can be really interesting. But I think it's definitely not what you want as a performer, to not have an audience there. And I guess it was. In some ways, we were lucky. We lived in a time of technology where that could bridge the gap a little bit. I think it wasn't it never replaced it. And I don't think live streaming in general has really remained a thing which has, as some venues are still live streaming, but I don't think it's necessarily affected audience numbers or anything. I think people want to come out and they want to, experience music, and artists want audiences there to share their music with. So it was a really strange time, and I'm glad we're back. For the moment, you never know what's going to happen, but for the moment, everything is back to normal, and audience numbers, in my experience lately, have been actually really good. Like there's been playing in London, not so much for my own band, but different projects, and I've been really impressed by turnouts, so I'm hoping I don't know if that's the same everywhere, and but I think people seem to be going out to stuff at the moment, which is fantastic.
They do. I've noticed that more and more gigs are selling out, or certainly close to capacity. You walk into most venues and there may be a couple of seats, but that's probably people who've bought the tickets and not been able to come or whatever. But actually, most often, they're people are playing to large audiences.
I agree with you. And it's so important. It's so important for audience, for artists, but it's also important for people. Like that. These spaces exist. Like I've been at the Vortex a couple of times this month, and they're important places for community and sharing things. And I think I guess now more than ever, really, with the way people
Yeah.
spend a lot of their time online, the way people interact a lot online. Having those spaces is so important. So yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
one of the amazing things about living in a place like London is having so many options like that. So
Yeah.
it's great to see people going out and stuff. I just hope it continues.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And when you talk about the Vortex, and one of the things I like about the Vortex is you go there, and it's all run by volunteers,
Yeah,
and
amazing.
it's your gigs allowing money to come in, then allows other things to happen
Yeah.
that don't bring any money in,
Yeah. And
which
of
I think
course,
is great.
absolutely. And we've all been there. Like I've certainly, my first few experiences there was my own band. People don't necessarily know who you are, and you're getting that opportunity, and it's not necessarily going to be full. But the club I think that's a wonderful space for music.
Yeah,
Like there, because there's a really great program there, and I've always felt that club is. It's kind of like home. It's because they've been very supportive to me. Like I've played there a lot with my band over. I mean, you know, in the terms of London venue, the most. And London's blessed to have loads of. Ronnie's is great, Peter Express is great, and but I've spent a lot of time at the Vortex, and so that's always felt like home. So it's a great place with lots of different music. People with different experiences and backgrounds, and yeah, so it's
mm,
fantastic.
yeah. Um, at this point, I would like to play a little bit of Westlake.
Sure, yeah.
So, can you tell me about how Westlake got composed?
Yeah, I mean, in 2024, the autumn of 2024, I did a tour with my band, which was, I think it was 12 days in Asia, which was in China, Taiwan, and Japan. And we went to, one of the dates was in this city called Hangzhou. It was all kind of a big surprise for me, really. Like, I had been to China once, but I'd never done a tour like this where I really went around the whole country, and someone was traveling with us, and we played at great clubs and had great audiences everywhere, and it was really joyful couple of weeks for me. And I was with Ari Honig on drums and Connor Chaplin on bass, and there was one of the concerts in a city called Hangzhou, and they have this famous lake, the West Lake, and it was, I think it wasn't so, the titles of tracks are often, I don't want to say misleading, but it's hard to sum up the emotion of music in words, for me anyway, and I think that when I came home from that tour and reflected on it, I was just, filled with a lot of joy, and had lots of great memories. And that was a place I really remembered very clearly. Before that, we'd been in big cities, and which I love, the kind of concrete jungle, but the lights and the intensity. And Hangzhou is actually also a massive city, but it has this huge lake in the middle. And it was just a wonderful moment. I remember we were all walking, like before the gig, we went for a walk, and the light was beautiful, and we were just chatting, and it was, it was a very special couple of weeks for me. Like the first time I'd gone with my band to Asia and done a big tour like that. So I when I was back in the practice room and writing music like I normally do, which is just playing the guitar and finding ideas I like, that was very much in my mind, That song was probably the longest I've ever spent writing any song, because I found it I had so many ideas for that song. I think because I had so many really vivid, amazing experiences, which I kind of were inspiring me. But in the end, I think it was actually really close to the recording date, like just a few weeks. I finally did some chiseling and worked on the final structure, and narrowed bits down and chopped bits away in certain places, and refined it. And then I think even as close as the morning of the recording, we made a tiny change to a structural thing. So it's a kind of longer form tune. There's lots of different sections, and it's a modern jazz composition in the sense of the structure. Like there's a separate improvising section which is not really related harmonically to the melody, which is something I don't do that often for compositions, but for this one I really wanted to do. So I love playing that one with trio and with piano. It really takes a whole new world, because the guitar and the piano have these harmonized melody lines, so you kind of get the full color of it with the piano and the guitar together. So it's also kind of slightly complicated rhythmically. It kind of, I don't think it sounds like it, but it's quite deceptively tricky, the rhythm of the song. Like it's a hard tune to talk about, because there's a lot of different things went into the writing of it.
Yeah, that's why I chose it, because it felt like a sort of fairly intense tune. So,
absolutely. Absolutely.
So one of the questions I'm going to ask you is, I've heard you play several times with vocalists. Have you ever written song? You talk about your tunes as being songs. Have you ever written lyrics for any of your songs?
No, I haven't actually. But a vocalist I know, Jemana Stella Lasorza, she wrote words to one of my tunes, Hollywood.
Yeah.
She also wrote words to another tune of mine, actually, called Prochida. So there are words for a couple of my tunes, but I didn't write them. Maybe you can tell from the way I'm answering the questions, but words are, I've always found it a little tricky expressing myself with words in a way. Like I think that sometimes I have the misfortune of hearing myself back on interviews or podcasts, and I've done quite a lot lately because of the new record, and I to really get to the heart of how you feel, I don't know, I never feel like I get it exactly right with words, and music is easier in a way, and so for me writing songs is about the music, but I was lucky that Jemana wrote beautiful words to my songs, and there's another vocalist who I've been working with has asked if they can put words to one of my songs. So it's something maybe, let's see in the future. For now the mystery of just the music itself without the words is all encompassing, but maybe sometime.
One of the things I find really interesting about this podcast is I always remember that quote. I don't know who said it. Talking about jazz is like dancing about architecture.
Oh, that's a great quote.
It doesn't make any sense at all, and actually the purpose of Harmonious World is to point people at new music, at music they might not otherwise hear.
Yeah.
Because there's so much music coming out. And this is great, because I get to choose the people, I speak to sort of 50 people in a year, and they're the people that I think are doing really interesting things that people will like to listen to.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's the purpose, is not to hear what you and I say in a conversation, but to let that lead people towards music.
Yeah, and I think I don't honestly. I don't even know some of the like some of when you were talking about that song. In some ways, I don't even know the answer. Honestly, I remember the things which were in my mind when I was writing it some of the time, but it's a normal day for me. I've just moved house, so this is not a super normal day because there's lots of unpacking and stuff. We just moved a few days ago, but a normal day for me when I'm in London, not touring, is I go to my practice studio and I play guitar, and often I'm working on specific things. I'm trying to get better at specific things, but a lot of the time I also just what I would call exploring. I just sit and play the instrument, and without much agenda or much routine, that's part of my practice. And so what comes out of that is a mystery, and I would never be able, like the songs on the album, I would never be able to write those same songs again. They were who I was as a musician and a person when I was writing them, and that's different now. And I actually recorded a new solo album about 6 weeks ago, and so which is not out. I actually don't know when it's going to be out at the moment, but I've been focusing on that a lot, and I'm thinking about my next recording, which I haven't sorted anything out, but I've got some ideas. So really, the music was of that moment, and the great joy is like touring it, is rediscovering it, but the truth is, I often don't know the answer in the sense that I don't know exactly where it comes from. I mean, some compositions or some things would be very obvious, like I can just particularly arrangements. If I've done an arrangement of a song, I'd be like, oh, I love this arrangement by this person. I had this idea, so I want to try and do my own arrangement of a different song. But in general, for composing, and particularly with songs on this record, it would be hard to really accurately pinpoint down. They're just my best guesses, and that's. Sometimes it's frustrating, but it's also, I think, the magic of music is that it's expressing something which can't be talked about, and I, I find that a challenge as well, because often you're trying to explain the music to people, whether it's like in this situation, which is fantastic, or it can be trying to explain it to myself, or my bandmates, and. Yeah, it's so interesting to me. It hasn't lost its magic or charm at all. It's still as kind of vividly mysterious as it's ever been. In fact, in some ways more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little bit obsessed with Ron Carter,
Right.
bassist,
Right.
because he's an old guy,
Yes.
and yet he talks about exactly that. It's like the music that he's making now is different to the music that he made, back with Miles Davis or whoever, Art
Yeah.
Farmer, and
Yeah.
and I think that's a remarkable thing. And the music that you're making today is different to what you will have made
Yeah.
6
Absolutely.
months
Yeah.
ago, or even 6 weeks ago, perhaps.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think Ron Carter's one of the most, if not the most recorded musicians in
Yeah,
history, or something
yeah,
like that, or definitely
yeah.
in jazz, because he's been on so many. Just in terms of number of records, he's been on so much stuff, and you're right though. It's certainly when I listen back to my first album, I can hear. I mean, there's a lot of things now, and in some ways, I hope it's the same when I listen back in 5 years to this one. Where in the world? There's a lot of things I hear about my playing which irritate me,
Yeah.
and I feel this one maybe I hope, I don't know, but I hope this one is at a consistently the level is higher, so I'm not sure if I will think that, I don't know, but I listened back to the first album, and I like the songs I wrote and some of the playing, but I also hear things about my playing as a guitarist and my just all-round musicianship which kind of bug me a little bit, so yeah, it's constantly evolving, and the same with the record I made before, Open House. I when I listen to it, I think, I practiced a lot between those two records, and I guess, if you work hard, it does pay off in some senses. It's never clear exactly how it's going to, but I hope that just continues, and one thing I feel, and I think I've mentioned this in interviews before, but I feel very lucky that, a lot of my heroes are alive. They're alive and really kicking, and making great music and constantly evolving. If I think of, for example, Kurt Rosenwinkel, the great guitarist,
Yeah.
the Kurt Rosenwinkel of now, who is, I guess, I don't know exactly how much, maybe 20 years old or 25 years older than me. But he seems to be working as hard and creating new music as ever. And he's done so much, and his level has constantly evolved and changed, and his output is immense, And,
Oh, yeah.
And that's what it's about, And when I look back to the greats of the past who aren't with us anymore, it's the same, sometimes just within a year period, the John Coltrane, from the late 50s to the early 60s, it's, that's a huge change. And so,
Yeah.
those are the standards that the people of the past left us. And of course, like, I fall way short of that. But those standards are there to guide you in terms of, okay, I'm just going to try and make an effort. Not I'm going to be that good, but I'm just going to try and make an effort. And, and that's amazing. But as I said, like, it's, because I love classical music. I listen to a lot of classical music. And of course, I go out to hear classical music. I go to the LSO sometimes, and of course, those performers are very much with us, but the composers aren't, And so to have some of my favorite composers, like Kurt Rosenwinkel is one of my favorite composers, not just guitar players, to have him just around, and to be able to go and hear him play, and that, and Aaron is that as well for me, one of my heroes, to be able to hear him play, to be able to play with him. I mean, that's crazy to me. So I feel really lucky by that. That's a guiding light for, for musicians to have that.
Yeah, it is. But I think also you're passing that on to the next generation, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I hope so. I would never compare myself to the people I mentioned. It's nice people taking an interest in what you're doing, that's for sure. And I feel, encouraged by that, and that's really nice, and so yeah, I'm happy people are taking an interest, and I guess that is the music or music in general, and not just music, other art forms, everything. And actually, I guess things which aren't positive, some of the negative things in our society are the same. They're kind of cyclical and they get passed along, and music is one of the good things we have to hang on to. So it's nice if people are taking interest in what you're doing, and I'm certainly taking a big interest in what other people are doing, and so yeah, I feel, even though it has its challenges and it's unpredictable, it's a really nice thing to be involved in. It's a nice way of living, even if it's complex. It's a nice way of guiding yourself.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, Tom. It's been a real pleasure talking to you again.
So nice to talk to you, and yeah, great job with the podcast, and thanks for having me on. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you for joining me for that episode of Harmonious World, and it's always a pleasure to talk to Tom Ollendorff. What you're listening to now is Three Bridges, which is that track that he talked about. All the links are in the show notes, so please do check out Tom's work and see if you can get to see him somewhere. He's a really exciting player live on stage. So thank you for joining me for Harmonious World. Please do share, rate and review this episode, and take a listen to some of the other episodes. I've got more than 320 now. So there's lots to listen to, lots of amazing artists that I have spoken to. And thank you to all my regular listeners, to the people that talk to me and tell me which episodes they've enjoyed. And thank you for all the reviews that I find. It's a real pleasure doing this, and especially talking to somebody like Tom Ollendorff. So have a great week, and let's all make this world a little more harmonious. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.